In from amongst a crowd of players. Neil Warnock's side increased their lead 4 minutes later. Mickey Heathcote creating space to head past Andy Warrington in the York goal. The visitors were awarded a penalty with 11 minutes left. Gary Bull's pass back saw Andy McMillan fouled by Corazin. Substitute Nigel Pepper scored past Plymouth's new goalkeeper Bruce Grobbelaar. Plymouth 2, York 1.
Ashes on Dixon's debut against last season's giant killers in this competition, York, who knocked out Manchester United then. And plenty of determination too, although much of the time was spent chasing the ball as his new teammates struggled to play to his strengths. York had the better of the first half and took the lead through Neil Tolson after a well-worked move. Having been beaten on Saturday by Carlisle, Dixon's team could have been heading towards their second straight home defeat. But Doncaster levelled this Yorkshire derby before the break, York keeper Andy Warrington having a bad moment and Colin Cram equalised. And he enjoyed the moment. The player manager substituted himself midway through the second half and started experiencing the frustrations of the dugout. His team had chances to win it, but Warrington made up for his earlier error with some fine saves, and Dixon's first game in proper charge of the club ended 1-1.
Because obviously you cannot see while you're playing everything that's going on, and you need people up in the stand to actually put you right. Decision-making come quite easy. I didn't think the lads played too bad, and I didn't think there was too many decisions to make other than get the old man off at the end.
How are you finding the sort of desk side of it all? Have you had much time in that?
I spent, I think it was 7 or 8 hours on Monday behind the desk taking phone calls. It was good. I mean, there's been a lot of well-wishers, a lot of old friends ringing up and wishing me all the best. And, I mean, that's great in itself to actually have people still think about you.
The fans have given Dixon a big welcome, but he knows the honeymoon won't last forever. Julian Waters, Sky Sports, Doncaster.
With this, that's Bournemouth for you. They'd lost their last 6 at York, but took the initiative on Saturday with Jason Brissett's instinctive shot. Bournemouth's second goal followed a much more studied build-up, and though the finish was perhaps a little less pretty, it was just as meaningful for scorer Steve Fletcher. York's late rally was sparked by Nigel Pepper, rising well to score for the second week running, but the outcome was identical, a 2-1 defeat for York.
2-0 behind against Millwall at half-time. York City looked a different side after the break at Bootham Crescent last night, and Nigel Pepper converted that penalty for the first of 2 goals in 3 minutes. His second was from Paul Stevenson's corner. Pepper's header made it 2-2 with half an hour still to play. That was plenty of time for a winner. A neat move finished off by City's summer signing Neil Tolson. Another header to complete the comeback. York 3, Millwall 2. Win number 1 for the Minstermen.
City. Last week they were bottom of Division 2 without a win. Tonight they're 8th after yesterday's 1-0 win at Notts County. A great goal too. Neil Tolson the scorer in York's first win at Meadow Lane since 1969.
York City led last night's charge on the Coca-Cola. Nigel Pepper's bender beat the wall. That's his 5th goal already this season. This competition has been good to York, and when substitute Steve Bushell was set free, his great solo effort made the score on the night 2-0. Bring on another Manchester United.
York City lost against Preston in Division 2. The only goal of the match was scored by Lee Ashcroft, unmarked for the corner in the first minute of the second half. Preston 1, York 0 at Deepdale.
Competition last year when they put out Manchester United. Could they do the same to another Premiership side, Everton? Your reporter is Chris Cooper.
Everton dominated a goalless first half, which saw York's young keeper Andy Warrington pull off some fine saves. But 10 minutes after the break, Neil Tolson combined with Gary Bull, the shock was on. Goodison stunned and Italian-style celebrations from Tolson. His 4th goal since switching cities from Bradford to York in the summer, and by far the most memorable. Everton were clearly rocked but responded with dazzling skill from Andrzej Kanchelskis just 3 minutes later. Two defenders were wrong-footed on the edge of the area and the keeper was unsighted too. A huge roar of relief across Merseyside. Everton needed something special and Kanchelskis showed his lacklustre colleagues how it should be done. York could have snatched it late on with this effort from Richard Cresswell. The build-up deserved a better finish, but it ended 1-1 to the Goodison grounds. York will consider this a moral victory. Manager Alan Little is already looking forward to next week's return at Bootham Crescent.
It's wide open. It's exactly what we want. You know, we want to fill our ground. It's a small ground, 9,000-10,000. We need the Everton people to come and watch. We need to come at them a little bit more. We need to play open football. We've got to win this game. And that could be the problem for us.
You seem to like this round of the League Cup.
Yeah, it's nice, isn't it? It's nice when you pitch yourself against, you know, managers like Joe Royle, Alex Ferguson last season. My players matching themselves against this type of player. Terrific for all of us.
Peterborough don't lose too many games at home. They don't win too many either. The game against York was their third home draw. Zeke Rose scored a stunner to put them ahead. York responded 3 minutes later after a goalmouth scramble in which Steve Bushell seemed to have the only calm head. Once again, Peterborough went ahead through Derek Payne, a favourite of manager Barry Fry, having served him at Barnet and Southend. But York bolstered their confidence before this week's Coca-Cola Cup-tied Everton, with Nigel Pepper equalising 5 minutes from the end. Just ask Manchester United about York's giant-killing abilities.
York only survived the first half against Stockport thanks to keeper Andy Warrington, and then went in front 2 minutes after the break thanks to Neil Tolson's glancing header. But they were sent reeling by 2 goals in 3 minutes by Brett Angel, the striker on loan from Sunderland. Everton arrive at Bootham Crescent for tomorrow night's second leg match, all square with City. Angel flopped in his spell at Goodison, but now he's spreading his wings with Stockport.
Last night celebrating after another terrific win in the Coca-Cola Cup. City are keeping their fingers crossed for another big draw in round 3 after they knocked out Everton at Bootham Crescent.
The York fans could hardly believe it. Their team had knocked out a Premiership side for the second year running. Last year, Manchester United, this time Everton. The victory, though, was snatched from the jaws of defeat. Paul Rideout crashed home an early volley to put Everton in front, 2-1 on aggregate. But York battled hard and deserved to get back into the match. Neil Tolson had been City's goal hero at Goodison in the first leg, and he was on target again at Bootham Crescent to level the scores at half-time. With the daunting prospect of extra time and perhaps even penalties, York stepped up a gear in the second half. John Helm is the commentator.
Stevenson's onside as well, and Hottinger has to backtrack, and Stevenson could get a second here. So unlucky, but it's got to be number 2. Gary Ball knocks it in. York in front. Stevenson, he's played well, and he angles a great ball through the middle for Murty. There's trouble here for Hinchcliffe. Murty goes on and on and on and on and into the net, and York City are surely going through to the next round of the Coca-Cola Cup.
A last-minute goalmouth scramble brought Everton back to 3-2 on the night. Gary Speed got the final touch, but the Premiership side already knew they were on their way out of the competition. 4-3 the aggregate score, another night of history at Bootham Crescent. So how did Alan Little turn his team into giant killers once again?
It's a good question. I don't really know. I think the quality's here. I mean, that's obvious. You can't beat sides like Man United last year. OK, a different side probably, 6 or 7 changes, but the quality's here again. They've showed tonight individually, collectively, we're as good as Everton. We deserve to win tonight.
The champagne was flowing in the dressing room after the match. Now York wait for the third round draw tomorrow morning. For Alan Little, a tie against Aston Villa and his brother Brian would be just the job.
For the third round later this evening. Well, their manager Alan Little is hoping it's another Premiership side, Aston Villa, managed by his brother Brian. For the moment, though, York and Lincoln, for that matter, are enjoying their time in the spotlight. At Bootham Crescent this morning, they were cleaning up and nursing sore heads after another giant-killing performance in the League Cup. York outplayed Everton to win 3-2 on the night and 4-3 over 2 legs. Neil Tolson put them 2-1 in front. Graham MURTY delighted the home supporters with the goal which ensured a place in round 3.
Graham MURTY will score! 3-1 to York City! A brilliant individual goal by MURTY!
It's a fabulous feeling. We've dumped the Premier League side out of the cup again. It's fabulous. I just want to go enjoy it now.
I don't know what it is. We always tend to pick ourselves up, you know, for games like this. But we've got to start performing in the league now, and when we do, we'll be, hopefully we're playing against Everton week in, week out.
After the celebrations, the manager's thoughts are turning to this evening's third-round draw. Who does he fancy next?
I don't mind. I think we've had our luck a little bit. You know, we've had 2 great draws last 2 years. We'll take anyone. I mean, you want a big one, don't you? I mean, I keep saying for a joke, I like Aston Villa, and I'd love to go back there, but if I get that, I'll be delighted. But anything will do, really.
York's exploits are front-page news in the city's evening paper again.
Evening press, please.
30, thank you.
Some say last night's victory was even more impressive than the one last year over Manchester United.
This time they haven't lost at all against Everton. They drew with the backs to the wall display at Goodison last week, but last night were in sensational form. And to beat or knock out 2 Premiership sides over 3 hours of football over 2 legs is quite an achievement.
York City were Coca-Cola Cup heroes when they beat Everton. It's the league that's given manager Alan Little headaches. But things were looking up when Neil Tolson's header gave them the lead at Brentford. And the travelling fans went wild when a great move sent Adrian Randall in to lob them 2 up with a neat finish early in the second half. Brentford went into the game as the only unbeaten team in the Nationwide League, and Robert Taylor's quick reply put the Division 2 pace setters right back into the game. Another of York's Coca-Cola Cup goal heroes, Graham MURTY, looked to have clinched the 2nd away win of the season for his side when he slid in with a spectacular effort that flew past Brentford keeper Kevin Dearden. But the London side weren't finished, and Carlos Saba was on hand to punish some slack defending from the corner to hand them a lifeline and a shot at keeping that unbeaten record intact. And that's just what they did, thanks to a real Route 1 goal in the last minute. The York defence couldn't cope as Taylor flicked on for a Saba to bundle in the equaliser, breaking York hearts and leaving the Cup heroes still trying to find the recipe for league success.
They took the lead again last night through Neil Tolson, who was first to a loose ball to register his 8th goal of the season. But Jamie Cureton, on loan to Rovers from Norwich City, pounced on a poor back pass just 5 minutes later. He tied things up, and Rovers boss Ian Holloway hopes to sign him up full-time, especially after his low cross allowed Peter Beadle to slide in and put the visitors in front before half-time, giving York and their fans that distinct sinking feeling. After the break, Adrian Randall, who scored at Brentford on Saturday, found room to fire home from just outside the area, but it was another 2 points drop for Alan Little's side. They're just above the danger zone.
With the victims of the quickest goal of the day. Under 2 minutes gone, City's defence dallied. Wayne Andrews didn't. Watford won up. Their second 10 minutes before half-time was just as soft. Keith Millen's given a free header. Gary Penrice gets the faintest touch. It wasn't until 10 minutes from time that York were thrown a lifeline. Nigel Pepper's run into the box, illegally halted by substitute Robert Page. Penalty given, and Pepper scored his 7th goal of the season from the spot. But it wasn't enough. York won, Watford 2.
York's first win in 2 months arrived against Crewe at Gresty Road. It took a belting goal to seal it. The man who got it was Gary Himsworth. But the victory hasn't moved Alan Little's side out of the bottom 4. York got their 2nd win in a week against the bottom club in Division 3. Graham MURTY's excellent run and cross gave substitute Paul Stevenson the chance to put them in front. But Stevenson went from hero to villain when his bad mistake in the 6-yard box allowed Bradley Sanderman to level for Rotherham with just minutes left. There was still a twist in the tail though. Stevenson involved again. His corner was headed back by Tony Barras. And Nigel Pepper was there to claim the winner. A good week for York, and it's Leicester next in the Coca-Cola Cup.
York City take on Leicester City in the 3rd round of the Coca-Cola Cup, aiming for another night of giant killing.
York City are getting themselves something of a reputation in the Coca-Cola Cup. Last year, Manchester United. This time, Everton were knocked out at Bootham Crescent. Tonight, there's another chance to make the headlines against Premiership opposition. Leicester City came through against Scarborough in round 2, so York will be out for revenge tonight on behalf of their northeast neighbours. The main incentive for the Minstermen, though, has to be a financial one. Another victory would bring another big payday to go with tonight's takings.
Tonight, about 25,000, 20 to 25,000 possibly. I haven't got the final receipts as yet. I've just had a fax through from Leicester with what they've sold, and tonight we'll be around about 8,500.
That's 8,500 fans, with most hoping for another York victory. The atmosphere will be electric.
Oh, it's frenzied, there's no doubt about it. And of course I think this is increased by the fact that it's not normal at a league match. It is a special occasion.
They're going to win. I think York City are going to win because they're such a good team and they've got lots of good players.
Well, I mean, in the past 2 years, they've become like giant killers. I think they'll be absolutely fired up, and the whole of York will be behind them as well.
As well as the whole of York behind his team, manager Alan Little can rely on some family support. Brother Brian takes his Aston Villa side into action against Leeds tomorrow night. Before joining Villa, he was in charge at Leicester, and he'll be keeping a close eye on events at Bootham Crescent.
I mean, it's a very tricky one for the family, in all honesty, for many reasons. But, you know, my brother has a happy knack of making it very difficult for Premiership clubs, and he's done that now for the last 2 or 3 seasons, so I wish him well. I know him and his team will give everything they've got, but at the same time, despite what people think, I still like Leicester City, and I still like to see Leicester City doing well.
But if he wins and you win, you don't want to draw York, do you?
He wants to play against my team, but I can assure you I don't want to play against him, that's for sure.
Fingers crossed then for York City tonight, and perhaps a family reunion for Alan Little and his brother Brian in round 4.
Bootham Crescent were in the mood for another upset. Over the years, Arsenal, Manchester United and Everton have all suffered at the hands of the Minstermen. League form may be a problem, but in the Cup, York are a different proposition. So would Leicester be the next Premiership side to feel the heat? The early signs were promising. It was goalless at the break, and York had taken the game to their big league opponents. But after the interval, it was Leicester who looked the more dangerous. The breakthrough came when a corner wasn't cleared, and Spencer Pryor teed up Neil Lennon to fire home a beauty. The Northern Ireland international couldn't have struck it any better, and it was the beginning of the end for the home side. Leicester eventually showed their Premiership class with a well-made second goal. Steve Claridge's back heel, Mike Whitlow's cross, and Simon Grayson's cool finish made the final score York 0, Leicester 2. The Coca-Cola Cup fairy tale was over for the Minstermen, but both sides knew they'd been in a game.
Yeah, I mean, I know York from the Crewe days. I was at Crewe for 5 years, and they're always like a bogey team for me. You know, they always had the Indian sign. I remember they beat us up Wembley in the playoff final. So I thought coming here tonight, you know, it was always going to be tough. You know, after they beat Man United last season and Everton this season, and we just had to be professional, and we got the goals at the right time.
On the night, possibly not much in it. You know, they've come and set the stall out. If you like, I think at the end of the day, they've done a professional job on us, and that's what they've come to do. You know, a 25-yarder which screamed in the top corner, you can do nothing about. The second one is to give them confidence, and to be fair, for long periods that we were equal to them.
Andy Scott's made quite an impact since moving to Chesterfield on loan from Sheffield United. He scored the winner against Crewe last week. He could have had 5 more against York yesterday. That was his effort into the side netting. It was goalless at half-time, but just 15 seconds into the second half, the persistence of big Andy Morris earned the breakthrough, plus more than a slice of good fortune as the ball popped up invitingly for Scott to slip it home. Well, while York can frighten the best in the Coca-Cola Cup, their league performances have been less than sparkling. They found it almost impossible to contain Scott, who brought a fine save from former Huddersfield keeper Tim Clark. Clark's only made it into the York side in the last couple of games, which perhaps explains his lack of understanding with his defenders that gifted Chesterfield and Scott the goal that clinched the game 17 minutes from Tyne. York had only won once at Saltergate in the last 10 years, and their defeat could have been even heavier when Jamie Hewitt's shot was blocked and the ball re-delivered into the danger area. Scott, scenting a hat-trick on his home debut, first hit a post and then fired the rebound wide. It scarcely mattered. Chesterfield 2, York 0.
York's third home win of the season came after a slow start against Wycombe last night. The visitors had looked the more likely until Steve Brown made a wild challenge on York's Gary Himsworth and gave away a penalty. There are a few more reliable from the spot than Nigel Pepper, and he gave York a half-time lead they barely deserved. Pepper was involved again when the home side clinched the points after the break. His clever pass sent top scorer Neil Tolson through for an excellent finish, and York are moving further away from trouble in Division 2. York made it 4 wins in 5 games with a well-worked goal at Bootham Crescent. Gary Bull teed up the chance and Graham MURTY kept his cool to give the Minstermen the lead. But York had keeper Tim Clark to thank for the win. He stopped Paul Weller's shot, then incredibly clawed out 2 more efforts. Alan Little's side are leaving the Division 2 danger zone behind.
6 points during the week. York City travelled to Bury in good heart, but the stuffing was knocked out of them by former Lincoln City man Dean West. First, he bundled the ball in after Rob Matthews' header came back off the bar. 2 minutes later, West was again in the right place at the right time to take advantage of more constructive play between Matthews and David Johnson. Within a minute, though, York had shown their resolve. Nigel Pepper, always in the thick of things, cracked in the shot. Ex-Minsterman Dean Kiley couldn't hold it. Gary Himsworth stepped in to say thank you. Bury's boss Stan Turnant, well remembered at Bradford and Hull, has forged a strong unit. They're unbeaten in the league at Gig Lane, Bury, and they regained the lead when David Pugh followed up his own header to force the ball past Tim Clark. And the issue was settled beyond recall 5 minutes from the end. Pugh again involved. The only debatable point was the identity of the scorer. Michael Jackson headed across from almost beneath the bar. John O'Kane simply made sure. The scoreline was emphatically undeniable. Bury 4, York 1. York have a good record at Gillingham's Priestfield Stadium, and they were given a helping hand yesterday when Bryant gave the ball away and then Ratcliffe clattered into Nigel Pepper. Unusually, the same Pepper was unable to rub salt into the wounds with the penalty. City's top scorer Neil Tolson has had a bit of a barren run recently, but he was the match winner yesterday, moving into double figures for the season, although to me it looked as though it could well have been an own goal. It was a nasty, niggly game, and referee Richards had no alternative but to send off Neil Smith for a blatant elbowing offence against Graham MURTY. And further mayhem followed when Billy Manuel got involved in a scuffle. And arriving on the scene, Pepper so incensed he saw red and got a card of the same colour. Gillingham 0, York
through after beating Hartlepool 3-0.
In contrast, York and Chesterfield have both found goals somewhat elusive this season, so perhaps no surprise that it should finish goalless at Bootham Crescent, though Chesterfield did have their moments, Kevin Davis outpacing Steve Tuttle, but directing his effort just wide. Now, although they're up there challenging for the playoffs, the Spyrites have only averaged a goal a game this season. They couldn't even manage that yesterday, though credit Tim Clark for the save from Tony Lormer.
York's 5-match unbeaten run came to an end at Kenilworth Road last night. They fell behind when Tim Clark pushed out Tony Thorpe's header, but Dwight Marshall was on hand to pick up the pieces. And Lenny Lawrence's Luton clinched the points with a well-worked effort. Julian James played the long pass, and York had no answer to Paul Chowler's cross and Tony Thorpe's close-range finish.
At Preston, York City in red were well on top for most of the game, and this Neil Tolson effort on 74 minutes put them 3-0 in front. Preston, though, refused to give in. 2 Ashcroft goals, his second a penalty late on, gave York manager Alan Little a few heart-stopping moments before his side won out 3-2 winners.
To be fair, we coasted, 3-0 with 10 or 15 minutes to go. They get themselves a decent goal, to be fair, and then a refereeing decision with a penalty with 7 minutes to go, and it made it a little bit tight, a little bit hairy, but we survived it, and it's nice to be through.
York's cup heroics seemed a distant memory as they struggled to unlock Wrexham's defence. It was well into the second half when Paddy Atkinson first threatened the Welshman's goal. And the chance of victory seemed to have gone when 15 minutes from time, substitute Richard Creswell's persistence laid on the best opportunity of a lacklustre game. Paul Stevenson toe-poked the cross high over the bar. In fact, if it hadn't been for goalkeeper Tim Clark saving brilliantly from Brian Hughes, York could have found themselves behind late on. And with 2 minutes left, the Minstermen rewarded his efforts with the only goal of the game. It was Stevenson's shot, but it's been credited as an own goal for Wrexham skipper Tony Humes, who sliced it past his own keeper. Bizarre post-goal celebrations have become a feature of football this season. What will they dream up next? Well, there were only 4 minutes gone when Blackpool's Tony Ellis gave himself the chance to show his repertoire. Surely one of the most imaginative yet. The only people not enjoying that were the York contingent, who were even less happy when Blackpool went further ahead just after the hour, as Michael Mellon's industry left James Quinn with a simple tap-in. Strangely, his colleagues seemed reluctant to join in with his celebrations. No way back for York after that, and defeat confirmed 10 minutes later when goalkeeper Tim Clark, angered by Marvin Bryan's challenge, flicked a boot out at the retreating fullback. Hardly any contact was made, but it was enough for the referee to award a penalty. Clark's protests were waved away, and Quinn dispatched the spot kick. Blackpool 3, York 0. York's away form recently has been less than impressive. 4 defeats and just 1 win in their last 5 league matches on their travels, and this time the luck didn't favour them either, as Paul Evans' shot just after the half-hour took a wicked deflection past Tim Clark. There was a trace of good fortune about Shrewsbury's second goal too. Mark Dempsey's shot falling nicely for Ian Stevens to turn and shoot through the keeper's legs. Shrewsbury 2, York 0. Brentford have hardly been off the top of the second division table all season, and yesterday they showed why. Within 7 minutes, the division's top marksman Carlos Saba had taken his tally to 17. York manager Alan Little was disappointed with the way his side defended, and he had a point as Saba waltzed through to add his 18th of the season in the 40th minute. The two sides drew 3-3 in the reverse fixture at Griffin Park back in September, and when Marcus Bent stopped Tony Barras' gallop into the box by pulling him down to give Nigel Pepper the chance to reduce the arrears from the penalty spot, it looked as though York might come back to deny Brentford maximum points again. But they reckoned without more poor defending and the sharpness of Nicky Forster. Soon after the restart, he turned 2 defenders and caught keeper Tim Clark wrong-footed. And 17 minutes from time, he effectively ended the contest with a goal that the goalkeeper will want to erase from his memory. Clark's been in our team of the day twice recently. No surprises, he's not in it today. York's only consolation, and it wasn't much, was that they did score arguably the best goal of the game. It came 10 minutes from time from Alan Poughton and made the final score York 2, Brentford 4.
1-0 last night to set up a 4th-round tie with Premiership Middlesbrough. Hednesford were awarded a first-half penalty when Paul Carty's shot was handled on the line by Gary Himsworth, who was sent off for deliberate handball. Keith Russell stepped up to score the game's only goal and send York City out of the cup. The win sparked these celebrations from 3
division, and they were given a further nudge by one of the teams below them, Wycombe, yesterday. Tim Clark's indecision punished by Paul Reed. The next blow came early in the second half. A ball drifted in from the right this time, leaving Mick Forsyth to wrong-foot Clark and leave York with an uphill task. The only consolation they achieved on the day came with just 20 minutes to go. Paul Atkinson's cross well met by Neil Campbell, celebrating his 20th birthday with a fine-headed goal. But any hopes York may have nurtured of salvaging something were destroyed in the last minute. Reed, a recent acquisition from Arsenal, sent clear of a square defence, and with Clark exposed, the finish was simple. Wycombe 3, York 1. York manager Alan Little will be asking questions of a defence which allowed Bury to take an early lead at Bootham. Despite a congested penalty area, no one got a touch before the ball reached scorer Michael Jackson, who couldn't miss. Nor would Little be happy about Bury's second. When John O'Kane's free header came back off the bar, ex-Huddersfield favourite Ronnie Jepson was first to react. York City 0, Bury 2.
Division apart, and Turf Moor's something of a fortress, but the trip there held no fears for the Minstermen. Neil Tolson, with half the field to himself, got on the end of Andy McMillan's through ball to steer home his 12th goal of the season. His first in nearly 2 months, but he hadn't forgotten how to celebrate. York hadn't won in the league since before Christmas, and when Nigel Gleghorn equalised shortly afterwards, that record didn't look like ending. If at first you don't succeed, try and try again. Everyone was looking at their stopwatches when York had a last-minute corner. Burnley thought it was cleared, but Scott Jordan had other ideas, and his effort was in complete contrast to Burnley's scrambled effort. And the win bonus was clearly welcomed. Burnley 1, York 2.
After an impressive win at Burnley on Saturday, hopes were high, and they dominated this game but fell behind when Kyle Lightbourne got away with a blatant handball and ran on to finish well, leaving the home fans with a sense of injustice. Times are hard at Bootham Crescent right now. The game was up last night when others just stood and watched, while defender Adrian Vivish acted. This was York's third home defeat on the spin. They're 3 points and 1 place off relegation.
The previous 8 league games, and with defending like that, it's not difficult to see why. On-loan keeper Mark Prudo saved Dennis Bailey's first effort, but Ify Anora followed up to give Gillingham a 4th-minute lead. There was some woeful defending involved in York's equaliser as well. Centre-half Richard Green's sliced clearance fell invitingly for Steve Bushell, whose crisp volley was in stark contrast to everything that had gone on before. The game eventually turned on this incident in the 67th minute. Bailey's pacey run abruptly halted by Paddy Atkinson's lunge from behind. Inevitably, Atkinson was sent off. And to make matters worse for York, from the well-worked free kick, Simon Ratcliffe buried his shot into the bottom corner. Even so, York looked like snatching a point when, with 10 minutes left, Tony Barras joined the attack at a free kick and poked home another equaliser. But it all went sour again when Ade Akanbi sneaked between 2 defenders to head past Prudo. That's won the game, and that wins our unofficial celebration.
If York carry on where they left off at Walsall, they should beat the drop. They played well at the Bescot Stadium, and Nigel Pepper's first-half penalty could have given them all 3 points after he'd been tripped by Wayne Evans. And if you want to learn how to take a penalty, there's the answer from the Minstermen spot kick maestro. But the Midlanders restored parity late on. Kyle Lightbourne was given the freedom of York's half, sold a dummy to Mark Prudo, and
York were without a home win for 2 months going into this game, and the Bootham Crescent alarm bells were ringing again when Mark Stallard laid on the chance for Lee Cartwright to score the perfect breakaway goal for Preston. But that just made the Minstermen angry. They were level 3 minutes later when Nigel Pepper's mishit shot fell for Gary Bull. He held off his marker and made no mistake. And the home side was soon ahead. Nigel Pepper's shot, but the deflection did the damage. Still in York's position near the Division 2 danger zone, they'll take every bit of good fortune going. Nothing lucky about the clincher though. York's new signing, Rodney Rowe, was the man of the match, and he proved it with a stunning finish. Definitely worth another look, this one. York fans will be hoping for more of the same from Mr. Rowe in the coming weeks. This was a very important result, but York is still just 1 place above the danger zone.
You have to go back to early December for the last time York kept a clean sheet in the league, and they quickly found themselves a goal down against second-place Luton. Steve Davis with a header on 12 minutes. But York have made a habit of second-half fight-backs, and they did it again yesterday when neat work by Rodney Rowe and Gary Bull set up the equaliser for Neil Tolson. City started the day 1 place above the relegation zone, and the pressure seems to be telling on manager Alan Little, dismissed from the bench after a touchline row with referee Terry Heilbronn. After that, it was anyone's game. Luton might have won it when Tony Thorpe wriggled his way to the byline. He was entitled to ask where his teammates were. All it needed was a touch. And York too should have snatched it when Rowe, in his second game since signing from Huddersfield, set up another chance for Tolson, who miscued horribly. So the final score, York 1, Luton 1. Clear of the relegation zone, and they got the perfect start. John Sharple's volley somehow eluding everybody to loop in at the far post after 19 minutes. His first goal for the club since his move from Ayr United. But goalkeepers can be just as important as goal scorers, and it was fortunate that Andy Warrington was on top form to deny Andy Barlow as Blackpool threatened to get back into the match. It was a nail-biting second half for York and their fans, though they did have the chance to settle the nerves when Neil Tolson set up a shot for Gilbert, only for Steve Banks to pull off an equally fine save. So that set up a desperate finish, and again it was Warrington to the rescue. A point-blank reaction save from Phil Clarkson, the former Scunthorpe skipper, protecting the lead and maintaining a bit of breathing space for Alan Little's men. York 1, Blackpool.
No goals at the racecourse, and a draw probably a fair result. Andy Warrington did well to parry Gareth Owen's free kick, and he kept alert when Gary Bennett was lurking ominously too. Chances were few and far between in the entire 90 minutes. In the final stages at the other end, Neil Tolson was close to a late winner. Agonisingly close, but it finished Wrexham 0, York 0. Bournemouth's Dave Towns' motto against York seemed to be, "I've started so I'll finish," as he stormed through their defence after just 8 minutes. In an ill-tempered first half, Bournemouth's Jamie Vincent and York's Neil Tolson were sent off. Midway through the second, Dave Gilbert got a spectacular and deserved equaliser. Bournemouth won, York won.
Only 2 points separate York and Plymouth, and it was the visitors who threatened first at Bootham Crescent. Former Huddersfield man Simon Collins headed tipped over by Andy Warrington. In fact, the Old Boys network from McAlpine Stadium figured prominently. Paul Williams, another from the Neil Warnock regime, setting up the situation from which Carlo Corazin got the better of Gary Himsworth to bundle Argyle in front. Pleasure there for their manager, former Town number 2, Mick Jones. A despair for him when Andy McMillan's free kick led to a cracking volley from Steve Bushell. 1-1. Then another with Huddersfield ties. The recently transferred Rodney Rowe was sent off, and York had to survive an amazing scramble with just 10 men. Chris Billy, who used to play for you-know-who, just one of a quartet of Argyle men, unable...
Millwall have promotion ambitions, but it was York who took the lead 3 minutes after half-time. The goal came from a superb run by Paul Stevenson, who was playing against his old club. Neil Tolson applied the finishing touch, his 15th of the season. But in stoppage time, the Lions clawed back a point. Damien Webber made sure he was first to the free kick. His header proved an unstoppable equaliser. 1-1.
York City had the chance to ease themselves nicely away from trouble against rock-bottom Notts County, but they fell a goal behind early on. Craig Dudley's first ever in the league. Despite incessant second-half pressure, York, unbeaten in their previous 8 games, managed just the 1 goal, Rodney Rowe forcing the ball in after a slip by keeper Ward. But it was County who recorded their first win in 23 games. Matt Redmile's looping header did the trick. York 1, Notts County 2.
A real relegation 6-pointer at Bootham Crescent. York nearly settled their nerves through Neil Tolson, but his header was brilliantly saved by Bart GRAEME. If it was vital for York, it was do or die for Peterborough. They couldn't believe it when Simon Clark's header was hacked off the line by Gary Bull. And Bull was to prove the match winner. After Tony Barras saw his shot saved, the ball bounced around the area. John Sharples had a swing, and it fell for Bull to finally finish the job. Peterborough had Michael Williams sent off for 2 bookable offences. They looked doomed, but the result boosts York's chances of dodging the drop from Division 2.
Disastrous day for York City. Watford hadn't scored in 4 games, but it took 20 minutes for Craig Ramage to put that statistic to bed with a close-range header. More poor defending plunged City into deeper trouble in the closing minutes of the first half. First, Andy McMillan's weak clearance, punished by Tommy Mooney. And then 2 minutes away from the sanctuary of a half-time breather, Andy Warrington failed to get to Nigel Gibbs' cross and was beaten by Ramage again to leave York on a damage limitation exercise. At least they kept Watford down to just 1 more goal in the second half. The long-serving Gibbs again involved, and Clint Easton, who sounds more like a cowboy than a footballer, completed York's miserable trip down the M1. Watford 4, York City 0.
York are in serious trouble after another defeat, masterminded by their former manager John Ward, looking to take Bristol City out of the division by more acceptable means. Former Rotherham striker Sean Gota took just 6 minutes to open the scoring. The Minstermen were still in it up until half-time, but 2 quick goals then killed them off. First Kevin Nugent after Gota had been denied, but the big Bermudan got his second when the defence went AWOL a few minutes later. A worrying fortnight ahead. York 0, Bristol City 3.
York were at Stockport, up against a county side with everything to play for at the top of the table. The Minstermen threw away the lead. Neil Tolson had opened the scoring on 20 minutes. A solo goal with a bit of help from the Stockport defence. County are still going for promotion after their Coca-Cola Cup exertions, and they levelled the score 6 minutes later. Tom Bennett unmarked for the header. The winner came 15 minutes from the end. Brett Angel made it 2-1 at Edgeley Park. York have 2 games left in their fight for safety. There'll be second division football at Bootham Crescent again next season. York City made sure of that with a 2-0 win at Rotherham. Rodney Rowe opened the scoring just on half-time. Top scorer Neil Tolson got the second after the break, and that was enough. Shrewsbury also needed to win, but they didn't, so Alan Little's York are safe from relegation.
Their second division place assured, York City relaxed and with a better side against Crewe, taking the lead after Rodney Rowe's footwork opened the way for Mark Tinkler's first goal since an £80,000 move from Leeds United. Crewe are in the playoffs, but they were happy to settle for a point yesterday. Ashley Westwood header early in the second half. York City 1, Crewe Alexandra 1.